Hello, my name is Frank Caprio, a true conservative, defender, and educator of our founding principles. My works can be found at Constitutional Cappuccino. That's www.constitutionalcappuccino.com. I am here today to celebrate Constitution Day. 231 years ago today, on September 17, 1787, delegates approved the Constitution for ratification by the states. Then on June 21st, 1788, the Constitution became the official governing document of the United States of America when New Hampshire became the 9th of 13 states to ratify it. And what did they give us? They gave us the Constitution of the United States, which created our federal government. Before our Constitution was ratified, we were under a loose confederation under the Articles of Confederation. Originally, the Constitutional Convention was convened to beef up the Articles of Confederation, but it was quickly determined that it was insufficient to the task and a new Constitution needed to be created. And what is the Constitution? It is a compact. That is a fancy word for a contract between sovereign entities. The 13 colonies came together, created the document, and then ratified it. Contained in this contract was the design for our new federal government. They enumerated specific powers that the states already had, but felt that a central power could better utilize. James Madison said it best in Federalist Number 45. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain to the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The former will be exercised principally on external objects, as war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, with which last the power of taxation will, for the most part, be connected. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to the objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, conserve the lives, liberties, and prosperities of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. And an important note. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, were not part of the original Constitution. Their addition happened when they were ratified on December 15, 1791. Realize that the Constitution is America. Before it was ratified, we have a loose confederation of states. And what they meant by states at the time was not what we mean today. States were equated with independent countries. Right from the Declaration of Independence, this fact can be shown, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they were absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. So to put this idea together, what we had were 13 separate countries who came together to form an entity which would do some specific tasks that each individual entity itself would find cumbersome to do in conjunction with the other 12. For instance, treaties. Instead of each state having to make a treaty with a foreign country, we delegated that power to a central body that could make treaties for all the states at once. It's a simple concept, one that we have gotten away from today. So what do we see today? What we see is that most politicians and people we hire to run our government break the law every day. They take an oath to the Constitution, but it's only lip service. Many of these people work in departments and agencies that should not even exist. They create regulations which have the power of law, what we have dubbed the administrative state. Our Constitution is very clear on the enumerated powers that we delegated to our federal government, and for many decades they have exceeded that authority. It's time this must end. Why is this happening? The number one reason, our government-run schools. Our schools are failing Americans while succeeding with their true mission. the dumbing down of America. Most cannot identify what a constitutional government should or would look like. We allow our federal government to break laws with no repercussions. There was a study done by the Annenberg Public Policy Center which reveals a disturbing truth. 26% of people know the three branches of government. 33% do not know any branches of government. Another survey stated that only 2% of all Americans know the 5 rights protected by the First Amendment. How can you protect your rights when you don't know what they are? How can you support a government when you don't know what the Constitution says? This is a planned attack on our republic. This is a long-term strategy to destroy our country from within. Make no mistake about that. So what do we see in political circles today? Democrats have embraced socialism. There is no other way to put it. We have people like Bernie Sanders. We have a gentleman here in Florida running for governor, Andrew Gillum, who are self-espoused socialists. Redistribution of wealth, infringement of our rights, non-recognition of unalienable rights. These are the hallmarks of a socialist state. Socialism is a failed ideology. Socialism is evil. Socialism does not recognize unalienable rights. Under socialist regimes, the government determines what rights you have and what is best for the people. It is unfortunate that the Democrats have moved to this position. It can only happen because of the ignorance of the populace. On the other side of the aisle, we have Republicans, which are complicit in the introduction of socialism in our country. History proves that fact. Look at the last century plus of what we've done in our country. Things like Social Security, Medicare, the Federal Reserve, the control of communications and transportation, an inheritance tax, the degradation of property rights. These are all right out of the socialist playbook. Ignoring unalienable rights and allowing the state to take control of the lives of Americans. This is not why we were founded, and this is not the trajectory towards liberty and prosperity. This move away from our founding principles has been incremental. Remember the story about boiling frogs. You put them in cold water and turn up the heat slowly so they acclimate, so they don't get alarmed until it's too late, and then they're boiled to death. That is exactly what we're looking at in our country, and it is now accelerating at a pace that is unsustainable. Republicans long ago stopped honoring their oath to office to the Constitution of the United States. Republicans are complicit in the introduction of socialism in our country. History proves this fact. Actions and items such as Social Security or Medicare, the Federal Reserve, the control of communications and transportation, the IRS and a graduated tax system, an inheritance tax, the degradation of property rights are some of the items that we've seen introduced into our country in the last century. These are all a socialist dream. The idea that the government can control the lives of its citizens and determine what rights that we have. This is a break from our founding principles. These ideas are moving us away from our trajectory of prosperity and liberty and moving us towards dependence and poverty. They must be fought and they must be stopped. This has been introduced in our country in an incremental fashion. Remember the story of the proper way to boil frogs. You put them in cold water and slowly turn up the heat, and by the time it gets too hot, they don't realize it, and then they die. That is exactly what our country is experiencing now. And the real problem is that we're doing nothing to combat this problem, and we continue to move down the road to serfdom. So nowadays, any conservative or any person who supports our founding ideals and understand what made this country as free and prosperous as it is have rejected Democrats. Yet, a lot still support Republicans out of fear of Democrats being in power. This, to a certain point, I can understand, but the Democrats are taking us towards a socialist state at a fast pace. The Republicans are doing it at a slower pace. The end result is going to be the same: the destruction of our country. Make no mistake about this. Our country cannot survive on our present trajectory. We will go the way of many failed nations throughout history if we do not once again embrace our founding principles and recognize unalienable rights and limiting government and consent of the governing. All the things that made us a great country. Our country is indeed dying. We are bankrupt and continue to go farther and farther into a crippling debt. People throw around numbers that are unimaginable. Trillions of dollars, $21 trillion in debt, with outstanding obligations topping 60 trillion. The idea of a trillion is beyond human comprehension. I'm pretty good at math. I understand what a trillion is. A trillion is 1,000 billions. It's a million millions. I can work with it mathematically, but to imagine it is not comprehensible to the human mind. I will ask you a simple question. If we were to measure a trillion seconds, ask yourself, how long is that? How many years, days, and minutes is a trillion seconds? Think about it for a second, and I will tell you the answer. A trillion is over 31,000 years. 31,000. And that number is even unimaginable to most people. 31,000 years ago, what was happening on this earth? I don't know. I could look it up. I could find out. But my point is that we throw around numbers. We allow people to tell us numbers that are incomprehensible to most people, to all people. It is just not in the human condition to understand what these numbers mean. Again, we can work with them mathematically, but that doesn't give us the comprehension of exactly how bad of a situation that we are in. Another primal problem that we face is our public education system. It is a failing system. Yet what we do is continue to throw more money at the problem, thinking that money is going to solve it. It is not. This has been going on for decades now. A lot of people have rightfully identified the education system as a problem, yet nothing is being done about it. There was a recent study published by the Annenberg Public Policy Center which reveals some disturbing truths. Only 26% of Americans know the three branches of government. 33% of them don't know any branches of government. How can people understand what a constitutional government should or would look like when they don't even have the most basic of facts? There was another survey that I just read that states that only 2% of people know all 5 of the rights protected by the First Amendment. How can we secure our rights if we don't even know what they are? This is another incremental attack on our republic that has been foisted upon us in the last number of decades. Liberty is our birthright. Our founding fathers gave us a gift, the most precious gift they could give us, and that is liberty. They paid for it with their blood and their lives, and we have allowed it to be taken away from us. If we do not change course, future generations, our children and their children and their children's children, will have to once again spill blood and sacrifice lives to regain what we were given. It is time we stop allowing our government and allowing the subversive forces within our country to destroy our country. It is time that the truth be known. It is time for our founding principles to be espoused and to be supported and to once again be reintroduced into government at all levels of government, from the county to the states to the federal government. We must once again embrace our founding principles for our country to survive. This is not hyperbole. This is not an overstatement. This is the truth. Our country will cease to exist if we do not do something to rein in our federal government, and actually governments at all levels, at the city, county, and state level. It is time we once again embrace freedom, understand what it is to be an American, what made American great, and to once again grasp those principles and ideals and to make our government do what it's supposed to do. So how do we accomplish this? The first thing to do is to get educated. I already talked about the miseducation in America. Only 26% of people can name the three branches of government. A high majority of people cannot even identify what a constitutional government is or why it is important to have. So get educated. Read the Declaration of Independence. Read the Constitution. Stop relying on the media and pundits telling you what it means. Stop listening to lawyers. Stop listening to the Supreme Court interpreting the law. Interpretations of interpretations have taken us away from the plain and simple meaning of our Constitution and our founding principles, and it has led us to the precipice that we face today. There are some great sources out there that can help you get educated. At the top of my list is KrisAnne Hall. She's a constitutional attorney who quit her job to travel these United States, educating people on our founding principles, on our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, our founding principles, the things that make this country great. I am a very critical person, but with her, I have never, ever, and I don't use those words often, never or ever, found her to push any type of mistruth. Everything that I have read from her or listened to her on her different presentations has been the truth. Her agenda centers on liberty. When people realize how we've been lied to, how we've been manipulated, and how people in government and in the media and other forces around the world have worked to destroy this country from within, they get rightfully angry. It seems that throughout history, whenever a nation achieves prosperity, people stop becoming interested in what their government does, and governments go out of control. This is nothing new in history, and this is exactly what we're witnessing today in the United States of America. I suggest that you visit KrisAnne Hall's website. That's www.krisannehall.com, KrisAnnehall.com. She has a Liberty First University, which she created, which she continually adds on to, which teaches these principles in detail. You listen to everything she has to say, and you understand what she says, and that will put you in the top 1% of Americans who understand exactly why America was created and where we have fallen off the path. I rarely recommend any person. I'm a principles over person kind of guy, but she is one that I have never, ever found to tell a mistruth. Her agenda is liberty, and I support her fully, and I hope that when you discover her, you will do the same. Another great resource is the 10th Amendment Center. Michael Boldin has assembled a litany of articles and videos describing the actual problems that we face today and how they deviate from the supreme law of the land. It is a great educational source, and it is very timely for what we're experiencing today. So I highly recommend the 10th Amendment Center. Hillsdale College also has some free online courses that you can take. There's 2 on the Constitution, Constitution 101, Constitution 201, and plenty of other courses that'll fill in the gaps, that'll give you a basic understanding of our founding principles. Another great resource is a film that was released last year, In Search of Liberty. It is a film about the Constitution. It is fun, and it's educational at the same time. And it's a great introduction to our Constitution, why it is important, and how our country is deviating from the path of the Constitution, and why it's important that we get back on that path. I just I just noticed that when I went to their website that they've reduced the price to $9.99. I get no money for talking about this or any of these people. I do this because these are great educational sources. I highly recommend that you get this CD. It's great for kids. It will bring you up to speed to a point that further education will fill in the blanks, fill in the specifics, the details of our founding principles. Highly recommended. In Search of Liberty. And of course, my website, www.constitutionalcappuccino.com, the wake-up call to the Constitution and the ideals it espouses. In the next couple weeks, I will be upgrading the website, and I'll include a lot more resources for people to get educated on our founding principles. Realize that there is no silver bullet. There is nothing that's going to turn around the incremental destruction of our country other than the people becoming irate and demanding that government fit back into its constitutional box. Which leads me to my next point. Be vocal about the truth. Whether it's on Facebook or in other social media, or talking with your friends and neighbors, going to different meetings, or when you're looking for a candidate to support, be vocal about the truth. The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself. Most people have not been exposed to the facts of our founding or the principles that we were founded upon. Simply speaking these truths will allow people to educate themselves to see the true solutions to the problems that we face as a nation. So get educated, get vocal, and defend America. The last point I'll make, I believe, will be the most controversial, but it is something that I have done, and that is to stop supporting the duopoly that we have of Republicans and Democrats. I was a lifelong Republican, as I've said before in earlier podcasts. My first vote was for Ronald Reagan in 1984. As I continued to get more educated and to actually get involved in politics, I realized that the Republican Party no longer supported the founding principles of this country. Like Reagan did with the Democrat Party, I did with the Republicans. I didn't leave the Republican Party. The Republican Party left me. The Democratic Party is already fracturing. That is why we see a strong Republican presence across this nation at the state and local level, and definitely at the federal level. It is time for conservatives to look for a party who will actually represent you. The Republicans no longer represent limited government, fiscal responsibility, or the sovereignty of our nation. They have turned their backs on the Constitution and can no longer be supported by true Americans. I understand how difficult this decision can be for people. I understand the angst that can be created when you make this decision. But I've been there and I've done that. And I tell you that it is a good feeling to know that you support a party that actually supports your principles, the principles of the founding of this country. I am now a member of the Constitution Party, an organization that actually represents my views. It's a good feeling. Further realize that just because you left the duopoly doesn't mean that you can't vote for anyone that you feel you want to support to actually put them into office. You may lose the ability to vote in a primary to see who's going to represent that party, but realize that you still have the same vote to vote for whoever you want to support them to get them into office. The idea that you will lose influence if you leave the duopoly is simply false. Pressure continues to mount against the duopoly as third parties and MPA numbers continue to grow. Your move away from their brand of destruction will weaken them and allow true statesmen to once again be put into office. And if you think you can change the parties from within, realize that you have over a century of momentum to overcome. It is not going to happen. Republicans and Democrats have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that their policies are ruining America. The duopoly must be broken. There are also many NPAs out there, no party affiliation, who have rejected the two major parties, but who still vote. I urge you, if you're an NPA, to look into a third party. There are plenty of good ones out there. Find one to support and become a member. As third parties continue to grow, it will embolden other people to make the switch. As people continue to get educated and realize the truth, they will also be making these changes. Principle over party is a mindset Americans must adopt for us to remain a free people. On this day, Constitution Day, I urge you to stop with the distractions, to stop letting the media lead us around by the nose, to stop listening to politicians and pundits, and get to the source of the problem. It is time for Americans to act like Americans once again and demand our government follow the law. If we can accomplish this, most of the problems that we face as a nation will disappear, and we will once again be the beacon of hope for the rest of the world. Because if our country is destroyed, if our country fails as a nation, there is no other place on this earth where people can turn for true liberty and prosperity. My name is Frank Caprio, and I thank you for listening.